Hi friends, I hope everyone is doing well. I decided to make a YouTube video talking about my sobriety. So I did make one last fall. This video ended up being super long. I was talking about my sobriety journey while making fire cider, and I was still pretty new at making YouTube videos. I still consider myself to be very new at making YouTube videos. I don't understand the content creation portion of this world. It's very difficult. I really truly admire people that are able to do like YouTube videos full time. I don't see that in my future, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Anyway, I figured a good format would be to like do a Q&A. And so on my Instagram, I think about a week ago, I put one of those little question stickers in my story saying, you know, I'm gonna make a YouTube video about my sobriety, and I did mention that I do use medical marijuana so that there wouldn't be any confusion. So to talk about my sobriety from alcohol, and that I would make a YouTube video about it. So here we are. I have all the questions here on my tablet. I went through and I tried to pick out the ones that were most relevant. Some of you guys asking some weird questions that were not relevant to the discussion, but anyway, I tried to go through and order them so that there's some, you know, continuity with the way this Q&A is going to go. So we're going to start with the first question. Two people asked, how did you start and how old were you when you realized it was a problem? So let's see here. My sober date is September 28th, 2019. So how old was I? I was 32. Pretty sure I was 32 years old. How old were you when you realized it was a problem though? I think that I started to realize it was a problem when I was 30, 31. And how did I start? I started by just stopping drinking. I'll go into detail here a little bit. Second question, sober how long? I downloaded this app that I still use called I Am Sober, and it's wonderful because it literally gives me my sober date down to like, it can go down to the minute. So 3 years, 9 months, and 3 days. That's how long I've been sober. What made you decide to get sober? So on September 28th, 2019, I ended up in the emergency room. And I consider myself very lucky because I have done some very crazy, reckless things while under the influence. Basically, I ended up in the emergency room because I had crushing chest pain, and I essentially gave myself like a pretty bad panic attack. I had consumed a couple alcoholic beverages before bed and went to sleep, and I woke up at like 2, 3 a.m. with racing heart, chest pain, and was essentially freaking out. And I got rushed to the emergency room where they did an EKG and lab work. And basically my potassium levels were dangerously low. Not sure how that happened or why, because I do eat a lot of potassium rich foods, but they said that could have been the cause of my problems. I knew though that it was maybe just a small facet of it. I had been consuming alcohol as a way to deal with anxiety and stress. And it was in that moment that I realized that it was exacerbating it all. It worked great when I was drunk, but I wasn't drunk all the time. In the moments when my body would like recalibrate, I guess, so like I'm sleeping, the alcohol is being processed, as soon as I would return to like a normal state of like sobriety, I would have rebound anxiety, or some people call it like hangxiety, like a hangover with anxiety. And I have dealt with that for so long, and it just got to a point where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So that's the long answer. There was also like a couple other weird random health issues I had. And when I would look up causes for these issues, chronic alcohol use was always one of them. And I was like, okay, there's a trend here. This person asked, did you taper off drinking? So like I said, I just stopped that night. So it was technically, I think, the 27th, because I went into the hospital, like it was 2-3 in the morning on the 28th. So it was the 27th I had my last sip of booze. And I think that, so there are obviously different levels of addiction, especially with alcohol. And I always phrased it like this. So at least this is my opinion with drinking, and if you have an addictive personality, there's black and then there's white, and in between the two colors is this enormous vastness of gray. And so the white side is you got a totally normal healthy relationship with booze, and you're drifting through this river of gray, and it's getting darker and darker and darker. Are you gonna know when it's pitch black? Because you're not gonna have a point of reference, you know what I mean? So I just knew that if I continued to drink, it would have ended up where I would have become physically dependent on alcohol. I was already starting to show some signs. I didn't really have like the tremor or anything, but it was more of like it was absolutely a mental addiction, and I did not want it to get to the point where I was physically dependent on alcohol. So that being said, I quit cold turkey. Not everybody can do that. It is not recommended if you are in full-blown addiction. So if you are in full-blown addiction, talk to your doctor, talk to somebody, because there are some really scary things that can happen if you quit alcohol cold turkey when you're physically dependent on it. It's very scary stuff. This person asks, what was an initial challenge at the start of your sobriety, and how did you manage? So I sort of romanticize my early days of sobriety because it felt to me like I found a solution, and I also didn't like tell anybody right away that I was quitting alcohol, because I had some friends that like I would drink with, and there's one in particular, didn't want her being like, you're not an alcoholic, you know yourself best. And I didn't want any external influences affecting the decision that I made. I felt like, this is gonna sound really cheesy, but I felt like I found this gift that I could give my inner child, and it was such a like special thing, and I really enjoyed giving that gift to myself. And what it was time. And I struggle with a lot of anxiety around death, and clearly consuming alcohol in dangerous quantities and the damage that it does to your body brings you a little closer to death. So I felt like I was sort of saving myself a little, and that was like super special to me. And I really like soaked in those feelings. It was almost like euphoria. The challenges though came at night because it was such a part of my routine, and the way that I managed the moments that were tough was I like created a new ritual. So before going to bed, and having a drink, I would make myself like a cup of tea, or I would experiment with making mocktails. Like I really enjoyed using tart cherry juice and lime juice and ginger syrup and tonic water or seltzer water. Like I really enjoyed, and I felt like I was doing something really good for myself, consuming tea or like a little mixed drink that was non-alcoholic. So I really appreciated that. And I also really appreciated the time that I had to read or watch television and actually pay attention to the show or movie I was watching. And when I was ready, I let people know. And I have a couple people particularly close to me that are also sober, and so I felt safe telling them and getting their support. I think that is essential. I have to plug Reddit here. The Stop Drinking subreddit was very, very helpful for me. If you're a fan of Reddit and you're considering sobriety, I highly recommend checking out that subreddit. AA, part of lots of people's sobriety. What are your thoughts about AA founders LSD trip being buried? Okay, I don't know if I didn't read this whole question before selecting to answer it. I don't know anything about the LSD trip, although I do know that there are some psychedelic drugs that help people with their trauma. So I don't know if it's in the same boat as that, but I do think that AAA I do think that AA is a wonderful program, and I wish I would have utilized it. I'm not sure why I didn't. I think my schedule was just crazy at the time, because I really enjoy being in a group setting and having like discussions about stuff. And so I think it would have been a really good part of my journey. It wasn't in my journey at all. And I guess it's not too late for me to go, right? I could still go. So maybe I will. I don't know. But yeah, as far as the LSD stuff, I can't really speak on that because I don't know a whole lot. Okay, this person says, do any of your family members drink? And if so, are you distancing yourself from them? So, my father, primarily on my father's side, there's a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics. None of them are active users. They've all quit, and my uncle, who is like one of my role models, he has, gosh, I don't know, I want to say like 30 years of sobriety, something very impressive. And he was actually, he used some pretty hard drugs. My father was an alcoholic, and he was really, I saw alcoholism very clearly with him, and it was terrifying. I was actually pregnant, and he was visiting, and I remember I had to take him to the liquor store to get, I didn't have to, but he needed me to take him to the liquor store to get like a pint of vodka. And exactly 24 hours later, he was staying with me in my apartment. Exactly 24 hours later, he asked that I take him to go get another one. And in the time that had passed, I didn't see him drunk once. So I knew at that point he wasn't consuming to get drunk. He was consuming to feel normal. At that point, it was sustaining his sense of normalcy. And it was really scary and very upsetting. And we kind of had a unorganized intervention with him. And shortly after that, he got sober. So I'm not sure how much time he has under his belt. I also have 2 other relatives that are sober fairly recently. I think it's pretty fortunate for me to have a close network of other people that are sober. I know not everyone has that opportunity, and I think that if my circumstances had been different, I would have had a much tougher time. So I am very grateful, and I don't take that for granted. I know some people aren't as fortunate. I really think that having the right environment and the right support system those are keys to success with sobriety. Okay, this person says, is making it to 365 days one of your target's goals? It worked for me. Best wishes. So I couldn't think, at least early in my sobriety, I couldn't think of that far in the future without feeling very overwhelmed and very upset, because it was like such a final decision, and I didn't like that at all. I think it was something that I learned from Reddit, the Stop Drinking subreddit, that it's one day at a time. Like, I will not drink with you today is their slogan. And it has truly reshaped the way I think about my sobriety, because it's just it's so easy to just be like, I'm not gonna drink tonight, you know? And then the next day you can kind of reflect and say, okay, yeah, yesterday was tough, but I made it through and I didn't drink. And then you can say, okay, well, I'm just not gonna drink today either. And one day adds up to 2 days, which adds up to 10 days, to 100 days, and then here we are 3 years later. And I think that has been the easiest way for me to digest the idea of never drinking again. Okay, this person says, what keeps you grounded and on the wagon? I think that therapy was extremely beneficial. I think a lot of people that have problems with addiction have trauma from their childhood, or they just may have some kind of a mental illness. Not everybody, but I think that a lot of people do. And I think that it's so easy to self-medicate, and drinking alcohol is so normalized and sometimes pushed, you know, like women and their wine and men in their beer. It's so like just in your face all the time. So I think that you have to learn how to control those impulses, and therapy was one way that helped me and continues to help me. And I think that I also find healthier ways to kind of escape. So reading books, watching TV shows, playing my video games, and sometimes doom scrolling, if we're being honest. Those are all much healthier than consuming a poison, in my opinion. I also want to add that, like, my family and my son especially, like, I get to be fully present in every situation. And there's never a day that I wake up and I'm like, God, I don't remember what happened. And if I do forget, it's because of like my old age, maybe older age. I'm not like a spring chicken anymore. I think that is so important, and it's like such a priority of mine. And also the reward of not waking up with a hangover. Like, nothing beats that. I can wake up, sometimes I wake up with a headache, and sometimes I wake up like kind of dehydrated, but it's never that anxiety. It's never that hangover. Like, it is just priceless, because that was awful. And the older I got, the worse the hangovers got. There was one time I was hungover for 2 days. 2 days. I felt like I needed to go get an IV bag. It was terrible. How has it changed your sex life? When I was in college, I was a very fun party girl. I would throw a lot of parties, and I would go to a lot of parties, and I also had lower inhibitions when it came to the people I shared myself with. And I think that I try to live my life with no regrets. I don't regret anything that I did, but I think that I did a lot more than what I would have done had I not been under the influence. So I feel like it has improved tremendously, because I have flashbacks to like how if I were a man, I don't think I could be intimate with somebody that's super wasted. Like, it would make me feel kind of gross, or like I was maybe taking advantage of them. And I also wouldn't hook up with a guy, like right now, I wouldn't be able to hook up with a guy that was 3 sheets to the wind. There's just I think that the alcohol takes away your ability to like function and offer true consent. So I think the long short of it is that it's improved. And this question, I appreciate this one. They said, do you miss alcohol in any form? Yes, I do. I will say that it's not as hard as it was even a year ago. There are times where I fantasize about, like, one of my favorite things to do was to get a shot of Jägermeister or some kind of a whiskey, not bourbon, not a whiskey. I would take a shot and then chill on a beer and smoke a cigarette. And that combination at the end of a day or at the start of the weekend, I still remember the way it made me feel. And it was just so good. So good. Euphoric. I don't think there's many things that meet or top that. So yeah, I do miss that. And I see people that can drink casually, and I'm just like, how? Why not me? Why can't I just have a drink and be cool with it, you know? Because I'm an alcoholic. So yeah, I do miss it, but the longer I go without it, the less the less painful it is, if that makes sense. And now we're gonna get into some of the more interesting questions, at least in my opinion. This person says, "You're still getting high, aren't you? Is that still considered sobriety? By the way, you inspire me and I love you." I love that you ended that question with that. I love you too. Thank you. This is a wonderful question. I really appreciate it. I guess you would consider me California sober, but I think that people that are California sober just use marijuana as like recreational. For me, I got a prescription from my pain management doctor. So it is fun, but it's not fun all the time using marijuana. If we would go back 10 years and you came up to me and you said, "Here, do you want to hit this bowl or drink this beer?" I would absolutely take the beer. Like, I don't need pot, I want the beer. So I don't really look at marijuana as, I'm not, like, I go days without consuming it. I use it primarily for managing my insomnia and pain and anxiety and stuff like that. And even then, sometimes it's hit or miss. So I think in my case, I don't think I don't feel that it impacts my sobriety. And some people may disagree with that. And that you're completely entitled to your thoughts in regards to my journey, but it's my journey. I'm trying to stay sober from alcohol. How has marijuana helped you? I don't know if I can answer this honestly because I didn't trade one for the other. I do know that I know that marijuana has helped a lot of people that have been addicted to alcohol and like opioids and stuff like that. But there was a long period of time where I didn't utilize marijuana at all because I had some pretty bad panic attacks while high, towards the end of, high school, when I used to smoke a whole lot. It just eventually got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore, so I stopped using it. I think that depending on what state you live in, I wish more people would be honest with their doctors because I think that a medical professional, and some people aren't okay with that, and I respect that, but I feel like I need to do my due diligence and strongly suggest having an open, honest discussion with a healthcare provider and let them know that you want to quit alcohol, and if medical marijuana is an option for you, depending on the state you're in, if it's legal, maybe you can just swap it out. I don't really know. I don't really feel very comfortable offering too much advice on that, other than the fact that you should talk to a medical professional about it. But I will say that I'm proud of you for considering it. That's a step in the right direction if you feel like you have a problem with alcohol. Do you find that medical marijuana helps with the anxiety? I have generalized anxiety disorder, but never tried it. I think it's different for different people. There are times when I can consume it and feel pretty good, and then there's times where I get way too elevated and I'm like, oh my God, I need to go lay in bed and not move for an hour or two. So, and I have a lot of anxiety, so it's hard for me to say because everybody, I think, metabolizes and feels differently when using marijuana. I would just say that do your research, figure out, there are strains out there that are dedicated or formulated. I don't know. There are strains out there that are more geared towards people with higher anxiety levels. Those are the strains I go for. And CBD is really good. I listened to a lot of like podcasts too before I went to the dispensary my first time, so I could have like an idea of what would be good for me. This person asks if I prefer edibles, smoking, or both. So I vape. I used to do combustion, I guess you'd call it, back in high school, where I'd spark up a bowl or a joint or a bong, whatever. I have since switched to vaporizing, so I have a dry herb vape that I use for my flower, and I also have tons of cartridge pens, which are nice. I'll be honest with you, I'm too scared to do edibles, because there are times where I over imbibe and then I feel really crappy, and time slows down when you're elevated. I like to say elevated instead of high, it just sounds better. Time slows down, and so like I don't want to feel uncomfortable for a long time, and then I know that when you consume it, it lasts longer, and so I'm just not ready to take that plunge yet. And I feel like, you know, everyone I've talked to that says, and I say I'm scared of trying edibles, are like, good, you should have a very healthy fear. And I do. So I don't know, I do have like some RSO that I picked up, and I didn't realize like how strong the concentration was, so it's still sitting in its packaging, and there may be a time that I'll give it a shot, like when my schedule's completely clear, but we'll see. And then I'll have to just let you know how that went. This person asked sativa, hybrid, indica, flower, or edibles. So I'm an indica girl. I love indicas very much because I noticed that it really just relaxes your body, and I do carry a lot of stress in my body, and I have a lot of chronic pain that affects me all over, and I think that it truly helps with that. I have a couple sativas that I have tried, and I have to be in the right mindset. I know that they can make you a little, I don't know what the word is, like sometimes my thoughts race. So I prefer flower. It's so tedious though, getting it all together and ready for I know why some people continue to combust and use bongs and bowls and stuff like that, because getting everything all ready in the capsules to go in the dry herb vape and everything is just, it's a lot of work, and sometimes I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. So I use my cartridge pens a lot, but I really love the smell of flower. I don't know, some of them just like take me somewhere. The earthy woods, somewhere magical. Indica is truly where it's at for me. That seems to be what works best. So I hope that this was educational for some people, and I covered as many questions as I could that I thought were like relevant. I'm gonna leave some resources in the description, because I really think if you're struggling, my heart truly goes out to you. I know what it's like to want to numb the pain, and I think that if you look deep within yourself and you can like see the littler version of you, I think you have to like find this desire to do right by them. And that was what really helped me get on my healing journey, because she deserves to heal. You know, my inner child, my younger version of myself, had a very interesting, challenging childhood, and running from it wasn't healing that past trauma. So I get to be present now, and I'm giving myself the life that I deserve, and in turn healing my inner child. That may sound really weird to some of you guys, but this is truly like what I think and how I feel, and I hope that it resonates with somebody. Just know that you are worthy of love. You're worthy of being healthy. You're worthy of a good night's sleep. You're worthy of not wondering what the fuck did I do last night. You're worthy of time. And I think that becoming sober gave me more of that. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like this video, hit the like button. If you like me, hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.